Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Soul-u-tions podcast. We are inching our way up to the end of the year being 2024. And so I thought it would be a fantastic time to start to think about 2025 and what you want to do in this time of your life. I think that most people get this part of the planning and preparation for the new year and how they think about it. I think they get it wrong. And I want to share with you the questions that have made the biggest impact on me and on my clients in their preparation for the new year. And this is the perfect time to start thinking about it. So I'll meet you on the other side of the intro.
Einstein said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." Most everyone in the world is solving their problems the wrong way. Our problems come from our thinking, and we can solve them with our thinking. So, whether you're at your lowest, just trying to grow, or whether you are trying to sustain growth over your lifetime, join us as we push the boundaries of our current thinking and redefine how we find solutions.
The hope and the strength and the love and the smiles and the laughter of friends and family. Add it up, you'll find no limit to the possibilities.
Well, I hope if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my beautiful new readers that I have here, because I have some notes that I wanted to share some things with you about. And thinking about setting yourself up for the most successful year ahead of you, there's some pre-work that you're going to want to do. And today I have all that pre-work ready to share with you so that you can feel like after you listen to this podcast, you don't have to turn anywhere else to set yourself up for the best year possible. This is really one of the most important things about having a life coach or working with me, whether it's on the podcast or in my membership, the Soul-Shine Lab annual membership for women in midlife and beyond. But I love doing the research for you so that you can free yourself from having to constantly check and read all the resources and do all the things. I mean, that is my job as a coach. And that's the service that I provide to you as my listener and my clients in the Soul-Shine Lab and my one-on-one clients. And so it is my mission to come up with what I think are the most important things that you need to consider to set yourself up for success in any area of your life. And some of the top experts right now, I don't know about you, but my email has been flooded with things like, November, it's the perfect time to start thinking about 2025. And in particular, one of my favorite writers and experts on this topic is someone by the name of John Acuff, Acuff. And he has this he's a writer, he's written a lot of cool things, but that's what he does. He's like, we need to start earlier. Like, think about it. Thanksgiving's coming up, and on the heels of Thanksgiving, you have Hanukkah, Christmas, all the things, and then you have this tiny window between Christmas and New Year's. And it's usually in that time frame that we have a free moment, right? That we finally have some time to ourselves after we've been thinking ahead for all the other people in our lives. And it's at this point where we finally allow ourselves to just put our feet up and maybe get a journal out and start to dream ahead for the next year. But what I want to do today is you don't have to do anything super active other than just listening to the questions that I want to share with you and the context that I want to set this up for you in. Because once you hear it, your unconscious is going to register these questions. It's going to go to work for you. Like when you're sleeping and your brain, I'm hoping you're going to be able to, to sleep because some people have such a hard time sleeping, but your brain is consolidating. It's looking for information that it needs to help answer these unanswered questions. The other thing is once you like land on one of these questions that I'm going to share with you today, one of them is going to speak to you louder, more profoundly than the others. Just sit with that question. Maybe take it on a walk with you, or when you're driving around town and you find yourself stuck in traffic like I am all the time. They have been doing road construction on this one thoroughfare that I travel all the time. And just when one part of that road is finished, they block off another part of the road. And instead of getting frustrated, maybe like let that time be your extra time that you've been given to just kind of recall one of these questions and just simply marinate on it, delight in thinking through it. Just give yourself like this luxurious sense of time that you have to think about these things so that when you do get to that tiny, beautiful, short week between Christmas and New Year, and you take your journal out and you start to plan for the year ahead, you will come to that session having done this pre work and prepared to really think about making 2025 like an amazing year for you. Okay, so a little bit of background here and a little bit of context. I was on Instagram this past week and I came across this anonymous quote. Time is the only currency you spend without ever knowing the balance. Use it wisely. Signed, the universe. I reposted that on my stories, and I cannot tell you the amount of messages that I received in my DMs with just hearts on that. And most of the people who sent me hearts have just experienced some kind of loss in their life, a loss of a loved one or some other kind of major life event. And as you begin to creep up into the upper echelons of midlife, and I'm going to tell you this because I'm going to turn 58 in the end of January in 2025. And when I was 37, I felt that initial initiation into midlife. But that was 20 years ago. And now I'm in this last, I don't know, 7-year time frame of midlife. Let's say it goes to 65 or maybe even 70. And I'm starting to really appreciate the time that we have in a different way. And having lost my father at the beginning of the year and my father-in-law having experienced a stroke right before his 91st birthday, and my mother-in-law turning 90 and my mom being 81. And today even, I just attended one of my friend's mother's funeral. There is this reality of time marching on. When my son Brennan was in St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, I really did have to come to grips with this idea that a life is fragile and sometimes it's very, very short. And thankfully, he he survived and he's 22 years old and in college now. But over the course of the last, I would say 10 years since I've been off the front lines of pediatric cancer, I've just been living in this point of midlife where you keep thinking, oh, you know, 40, 60 is the new 40, or 50 is the new 30. And I really embraced that thinking for a long time. But recently, I've been really kind of coming to grips with the fact that you can only push off the inevitable for so long. And I teach a concept in the Soul-Shine Labs, my annual membership for women in midlife, called strategic pessimism. Now, stick with me for a second here because I know we were like, oh, Tara, you're so positive, and people invite me to come speak at their events because they want a positive outlook on things. But so I'm not known for negativity. And when I say that strategic pessimism is a tool that I use, it is very different from negativity. It is what it says. It's a strategy. It's a strategic way of thinking where you go to the worst case scenario as a thought experiment when you're in a safe space. Like right now, I'm in this recording studio recording this podcast for you. It's very safe for me to go to the worst case scenario of, at the end of my life, what would I like to reflect back on and be proud of? And so I'm doing it just for the exact same reason this quote that I found on Instagram spoke to me and spoke to so many other people. I'm being strategically pessimistic and saying that, yeah, I mean, my life will come to an end one day. I'm doing that and using that as a tool to inform how I want to live this upcoming year of my life because, as they say, out of sight, out of mind. When you are constantly buying into the socialization or the cultural thought process that aging is way, way, way far away. It's way down the road when I need to start thinking about that kind of stuff. What I want to tell you now is that it is never too early to begin thinking about yourself as an older version of you, especially if you are a woman. I mean, when you go through perimenopause and menopause and your body stops producing estrogen, I mean, the leading causes of death of older women are heart disease and Alzheimer's and broken bones. There are things that you can start doing in your late 30s and that you really need to start doing as early as possible to stay as healthy as you can for as long as you can. Because what we're finding now is that, and what I can share as what I've learned recently with especially with my father's passing and other family members who've become ill, we live in a time where lifespan has pushed out, but health span is not meeting lifespan. What does that mean when I say health span is not meeting lifespan? People are living longer because of technology and new discoveries. We are able to keep people alive longer, but we're keeping people alive longer in a state that isn't like very healthy. And it is so sad. And so as I'm experiencing this, I truly am thinking about my own children. If they are going to have to take care of me, or they're going to have to be making decisions for me, or like, how can I keep myself? What are the things that I can do to increase my own health span to match my lifespan? That is a bit of a tangent. I know that I went on when it comes to thinking through how to make 2025 the best year possible. But coming back to this idea of strategic pessimism, like really thinking about this idea of time and what this quote is, we don't know what our balance of time is. And so we want to bring this idea into our planning process and our dreaming forward process of what the next year can hold and what we can do. We want to bring that a little bit closer to the forefront of our mind to help us appreciate the resource that we have in a year. There's a great book I highly recommend it for you. It is called, now that I've just hyped up the book, what is the name of the book? Oh, The Untethered, I think it's called The Untethered Soul. I read this book about 15 years ago, and it's a fantastic book. So there's one image in this book, and it's the Grim Reaper. And the Grim Reaper comes knocking at your door, and it says, ready. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's time. Like I thought I had more time. And the Grim Reaper said, I gave you an extra year of time. What did you do with it? So I want to bring this into the picture at the end of a year as we're looking forward into planning the next year, so that you can just sense and use that as a decision filter, right? Like, use it. I think we usually start a year off, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to do XYZ. And we're thinking of it like, I don't know, it's just a little shallow thinking. It's a little short-term thinking, like, oh, when I lose 15 pounds, my life will be perfect type thinking, right? Like, my clothes will fit perfect. I'll feel great. But if that is as deep as we get, and I'm not saying not to lose that because I've just given you this whole lecture on health span and lifespan, but stick with me. If we just are going to default to that as our goal for 2025, I don't want you to get to the end of that year, the next year, the next year, the next 30 years, and repeating that same process as your New Year's approach to the things that you set out as goals for yourself and for your life. I want you to just truly think about it as, this is precious. I don't know how much time I have on this earth. And given that I don't know how much time I have on this earth, what is it that I haven't done yet that would really, if I look back on it at the end of my life, that I would be saying like, yeah, that was time well spent. That was time well spent. Okay, so I've set up that context and this idea of being strategically pessimistic about how much time we have as a tool just a tool to bring back the preciousness of the resource and the gift that a year is in front of us. Okay, now here are a couple of the questions that I want you to think about. These are questions that I mined from David Brooks. And you may know David. He's a longtime contributor to the New York Times and a New York Times bestseller. He said, if this, and he's talking about 5 years, if you think about, and I thought this was kind of really interesting, if I didn't just think about just this 1 year, but if I thought of it as a 5-year time frame, or if I think about me being in the middle right now of a 5-year time frame, it just helps me kind of put something together here. So here's the question. If this 5 years is a chapter in your life, what would the chapter be about? All right, here's his next question. If this was a year from now, like right now, you're sitting here and we're having this conversation together a year from now, what would we be celebrating? I love this question because it actually invites us to go a year into the future and we're at a table and we're all just celebrating having had a year to be alive and to discover something about ourselves or to change something or something new to experience, right? And we're sitting around the table and we're all like toasting to one another about something that each of us discovered that enriched our lives. And then in the sharing of what we discovered, we're enriching one another's lives because it'll be the end of next year and we'll all be wanting to think about new things for us. And so now we've kind of turned this celebration party into a pay it forward party because you never, ever, ever know who you might inspire to do something new. I shared on an earlier podcast, and you should go back and listen to this podcast, but I shared in an earlier podcast how 1 year for Lent, I gave up gossiping, and so I've gone gossip free. And then another year, I gave up complaining, and I went complaint free. It took a long time to go complaint free. The guy that I grabbed the idea from, he built it as a 40-day process. It was definitely a good 6 to 12-month process to go complaint free. But that was 20 years ago. And so for the last 20 years, I have just taken complaining off my menu of ways to communicate and bond with people. And in taking that off my menu, I've opened up to so many other things being available to me to choose, to taste and see on my menu. So I share this with you because it's like it takes a lot of thought. Oh, and while I'm telling you about this going complaint free, that reminds me, I've got my glasses back on here for those of you who aren't watching on YouTube, because I wanted to invite you to join me for a webinar that I'm giving, a free webinar that I'm giving on December the 5th. And it is entitled How to Give Up Complaining and Start Asking for What You Want. The whole idea is to help you think about transforming your relationship with yourself and others by moving, from being frustrated so that complaining is the first thing that you reach for, to being confident in communicating what your needs are. And listen, there is like a special reason why I'm hosting this on December 5th. It's because I want you to consider giving up complaining for your 2025 New Year's resolution. And because I know of like how hard it is to do that, I also want you to consider joining us in the Soul-Shine Labs when I open up membership in that tiny little week, December 20, between Christmas and New Year's. So on December 26th, we're going to open up the final enrollment period for the Soul-Shine Lab for 2024, and we're going to close it on January the 2nd. So I hope you'll join us in this free webinar and get a taste for like seeing yourself, seeing your future self, like being around the table a year from now, celebrating the fact that you did it. You figured out a way to go complaint free, but you did it in a community of women and with other people who have this same goal that they are setting for themselves, and it will just be so scrumptious and yummy. So, on your calendar, 2 dates, December 5th from 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time to 12 p.m., just 1 hour. And make sure you're on my email list. If you are not, TaraSimkins.com, TaraSimkins.com. Go and get on that today. This is dropping November the 13th. So that'll give you plenty of time to get on my email list so that you'll get the registration emails for the December 5th free webinar. And I'm super excited. Want to invite you how to taste this. And then I'm going to send you more emails about joining us in the Soul-Shine Labs for 2025. So really start thinking about like, what is it? If going complaint free isn't your gig, it may be something else. It may be, I've got one of the members in the Soul-Shine Labs right now. She's already set her goal for 2025, and she's 48, and she goes, I am done with people pleasing. Like, I have tried to get over people pleasing for my entire life. And this is the year that I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out how to start to take time for myself and stop putting myself the last person on my list. I'm going to figure out how to say no and realize that I'm not going to die for telling someone, no, I can't do something. And this is the year, she says, that she wants to feel good about herself when she tells people, thank you, but no, I can't do that because I have this other thing that I want to do for myself, this other thing that I want to give myself. And in order to do that, I'm going to need the time and space that it would take me to do that thing that you want me to do. So I want you to start thinking about your thing. There's another member in the Soul-Shine Labs. This was her 2024 goal. And this was the year she was going to figure out how to, quote, let them, close quote. What am I talking about? What does let them mean? Well, let them is a phrase that Mel Robbins uses. In fact, last year she did a podcast called the Let Them Podcast, and this last year being 2023. It was her most downloaded podcast episode ever. So you're going to want to listen to that. And she has just come out with a book called Let Them. There was such a high interest in learning this skill set of how do you let people think what they think about you? How do you let people have an opinion that is different from yours about you, or about who should be president, or about what's the right thing to do in XYZ situation? How do you let people choose to go a different way in life? This could be a friend that you have who says, I've got this new interest now. And how do you let them? How do you let them do that thing without you being a part of it? It's not a cavalier endeavor to let people be who they are, and instead of who you might want them to be. How do you let people be different than you want them to be? How do you let people just move on from your life? And this is really tricky when it gets to family dynamics. It was interesting. I was fed this invitation in Facebook just yesterday for estranged mothers and grandmothers, adult children who want to go off on their own and really don't want to be a part of their family of origin as much as their family of origin may want them to be a part of that. How do you navigate that with the type of compassion and open-heartedness that you want? How do you allow them to make choices that don't include you and still hold them with a place of love in your heart? So when when I'm talking about thinking about 2025 and the opportunity that it presents you as a new opportunity to dive a little deeper, I mean, lose those 15 pounds at the top of the list, but just don't stop there. I'm reminded of Mary Oliver and that quote from, I think it's the Wild Geese poem, but what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? So as you approach this new year, I want you to start to think about this. Like, what are you going to do with this one wild and precious life? Is now the time for you to begin to think about that? And especially, as you're entering midlife, and like we talked about earlier, being strategically pessimistic, this understanding that it will come to an end and it won't go on forever. So if this is one of those things that you've been putting off for a long time, I just want you to consider that this might be the year that you take that thing off the shelf and that you consider doing it, because this is the year that you have ahead of you. Thank y'all so much for going on this journey of today's podcast with me. I really, really, the whole reason why I do this is because I just, I know that, that you are one unique human being that this world needs, and that I want you to really access whatever that is within you that you were born to bring out into the world, what we call the Soul Shine Labs. That's your inner soul shine. And I am going to geek out on at least one more or two more episodes before the end of the year with you, because I get so excited this time of year to try to light a fire and inspire you to let this year be the year that you do that thing. Okay, friends, until next time, enjoy the music on the outro, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
'Cause I ain't done living the life I'm meant to lead, and I ain't done loving the ones who cared for me. The hope and the strength and the love and the smiles and the laughter of friends and family. Add it up, you'll find no limit to the possibilities. The left and the right and some faith in the fight, and your courage is all